Welcome back to the Truth Over Comfort show. Recently, we did videos on Afghanistan. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different because you can't do Afghanistan every single video. I want to do something a bit shorter that's been in the news recently. It doesn't take like a lot of planning and time actually researching. So it's been pretty much everywhere in the media and the social media that an ex-Russian official is on a state-owned Russian media company, and they're having a conversation, and he ends up bragging about being good at coup d'états, as in overthrowing governments, working with oppositions, regime change covertly, and this state-run media company anchor interviewing him doesn't really bat an eyelid. He doesn't really push for it, but I mean that's what you get when you're in Russia or China on state media. They're not going to push. Oh, hang on, my producers just informed me, no, no, this wasn't Russia, China, or whoever. It was an ex-American official, an ex-US official on corporate media on CNN. There's this myth that if you're in Russia or any state-run media company, they just push propaganda, but this doesn't happen anywhere else. I mean, Britain has a state-run media company, BBC. Gets a lot of funding from the government, obviously. The people too, obviously, actually forced. So this myth is just silly. So I've got a clip of him on CNN speaking about this, and as I said, the Jake Tapper is the person interviewing him, and he's not actually that interested in questioning it too much. Barely bats an eyelid, as I said. So I'm going to show you. It's going to be a short video today. I'm going to show you this clip and just a little bit about it. I'm not going to go into coups or the history of ones in recent history in South America. They do discuss Venezuela a bit. I don't have enough knowledge on any recent coups in South America to speak about it well enough. Maybe I'll get someone on about it, and I'm not going to go into previous history. Everyone knows the Guatemala one in 1954 and Iran in 1953. The CIA and MI6 overthrow him for oil, basically, which then becomes BP. Again, I'm not going to go into that today. So it's John Bolton. I'm going to tell you a bit more about him in a bit. He was in the Reagan administration, the George H.W. Bush, the George W. Bush, and then most recently the Trump administration after resigning or leaving or being fired. I think he resigned. I'm not going to go into his specific positions previously because it's not that important. But for Trump, he was the national security advisor. As you can see, he's pretty old school, big moustache, who I could not think that it wasn't this guy from Looney Tunes with his big moustache, maybe a few guns when he's planning these coups or overthrowing these foreign governments. I mean, take away the funny look and the comparison with this Looney Tunes character who I didn't actually know the name of, which is, I mean, it's not that important, but why not? I mean, or even the Pringles moustache. This one just looks funny. Yosemite Sam is the one. But the fact that John Bolton can say this on a media company, just admit to, being brags that he's good at coup d'etats and, planning them abroad and not here, as he says, that he can just say that on national TV, the arrogance, the hubris that he knows. The arrogance that he is proud of it, overthrowing another government, normally involves a lot of violence and death and, against the will of the people, which is meant to be, American and Western values, democracy, letting them choose their own government. Apparently not. You got to do it covert, be proud of it. And the arrogance that he knows he can, or the arrogance of America and the Western system, that he can, I'm not going to say the Western system because I don't know if other countries, even Britain, which is hated almost as much as America, would actually say that on national TV. But the fact that he obviously knows they can get away with it, and he doesn't provide specific details, and it's not pushed for by the CNN anchor, but he obviously knew maybe if he made too many specific claims, one, it's classified, so he can actually get in a lot of trouble for that. They might actually get in trouble, but he can just go on national TV. It's been reported all by the media everywhere. And, right now, they're all going to report it. And then the next time when, someone on YouTube or you just an independent media says, oh, the US is doing this because they're planning a coup, or they're trying to overthrow the government for these reasons. And they're going to say, no, they're doing it, like Libya for human rights. and all this stuff. And they say, oh, that's crazy conspiracy theory talk. And then someone's going to, oh, remember when John Bolton admitted it on live TV? Oh, no, that was then. That was then. That was a one off, not now. Maybe then, but not now. Like all that nonsense. But anyway, let's get to the clip, and then I'll just show you a few other things to do with John Bolton, what he's been involved in. I'm not going to go too far, just to give you like the briefest summary you can of what this guy's like. And he mentions Venezuela, so I'm just going to show you another clip of him talking about, and it's sort of a follow on from the arrogance of how they talk about these other countries. And there was a Venezuelan coup attempt in the country. He says we didn't have much to do with it. Probably not involving too many details, but again, this is just on CNN's website. They're talking about the January 6th storm of the Capitol. I'm not interested in that today. The anchor's more interested about that and pinning it on Trump than someone literally admitting for doing coups abroad. So yeah, we're not going to go into the January 6th or anything like that, but that's what they're talking about, if you're wondering. So I'm going to hide myself and play this clip for you now.
Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell, is he just not capable of hearing no?
Well, when it comes to his personal advantage, the answer is he doesn't listen to anybody else. But I think it's also important to understand, while nothing Donald Trump did after the election in connection with the lie about the election fraud, none of it is defensible. None of it is defensible. It's also a mistake, as some people have said, including on the committee, the commentators, that somehow this was a carefully planned coup d'etat aimed at the Constitution. That's not the way Donald Trump does things. It's rambling from one half-vast idea to another, one plan that falls through and another comes up. That's what he was doing. As I say, none of it defensible. But you have to understand the nature of what the problem of Donald Trump is. He's, to use a Star Wars metaphor, a disturbance in the force. And it's not an attack on our democracy. It's Donald Trump looking out for Donald Trump. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work. And that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. Ultimately, he did unleash the rioters at the Capitol. As to that, there's no doubt. But not to overthrow the Constitution, to buy more time to throw the matter back to the states to try and redo the issue. And if you don't believe that, you're going to overreact. And I think that's a real risk for the committee, which has done a lot of good work, mostly when the witnesses testify, not when the members are opining. It is invariably the case that when you go too far trying to prove your case, you undermine it. And I think you got to give credit to the intelligence of the American people to listen to the witnesses and let them come to the conclusion. And I think the fellow who had actually gone into the Capitol, who said today that he had blinders on and he was too loyal to one person, that is the central point.
I do want to ask a follow-up. When we were talking about what is capable, what you need to do to be able to plan a coup, and you cited your expertise having planned coups.
I'm not going to get into the specifics, but
successful coups?
Well, I wrote about Venezuela in the book, and it turned out not to be successful. Not that we had all that much to do with it, but I saw what it took for an opposition to try and overturn an illegally elected president, and they failed. The notion that Donald Trump was half as competent as the Venezuelan opposition is laughable. But I think there's another...
I feel like there's other stuff you're not telling me, though.
I'm sure there is. I think there's another point here.
There you have it. He, in one sentence, I mean, he's laughing when they're talking about this. They're both having it's just so funny. In one sentence, he's saying about, the committee, and we should leave it to the US citizens' own intelligence. And then the next sentence, he's talking about a coup, which is completely covert and behind the intelligence of the US citizens' back, and don't even give them a chance to know about it because it's all classified. Well, how could you go from saying that to that? They're just laughing, just yucking it up. And then he carries on. I'm not going to play the rest of the clip because the anchor just wants to know about, they're trying to basically say Donald Trump planned a coup against the Constitution to overthrow them, blah blah blah. He's more interested in that. Imagine if I was on there, or any normal person, an ex-official, or who's been around for a long time, just admits to a coup openly on live TV, you'd be like, well, what details? Like, where? Be specific. You said about Venezuela as an example, but we didn't have all that much to do it. Not we had nothing, not that. And then he says, "Oh, I'm sure there's more to it." Oh, I'm sure there is. Like, wink, wink. Yeah, of course, of course, he was involved. Don't know enough about Venezuela or anything about it, but just from that clip, he don't really can't say because it's classified and it's illegal. But then also he's kind of proud of it, so he kind of want, even though it failed, no. So I can't. That moustache just hilarious, like Monopoly. I don't know. He looks like some old Wall Street sort of banker sort of guy in like 1920s. Oh, it's just hilarious. So he mentions Venezuela, so I'm just going to show you this other video of Fox in 2019 of them discussing it when there was hope that the Venezuelan government were going to be overthrown, and he's talking about the government in an interesting way of what if the government changes, it's going to be great for business, great for the US economy, sort of just a carry on from the link of arrogance. Again, I'm not going to talk about the coup. It's just clearly these clips and just him speaking, and I think it tells a lot. So 1 second.
Breaking right now, socialist dictator
informed the Federal Reserve that can't count on them to follow his orders. So there are extensive discussions going on by members of the National Assembly with the military. This is still very much in play, and it's one reason why today here in Washington we've been looking at ways to disconnect Maduro from the financial resources he needs to pay the military and otherwise keep himself in power. That could be a very effective way, we think, of helping the legitimate government.
How do you do that?
Well, there are a number of things we could do. We have already informed the Federal Reserve that Guaido is the real interim president, the legitimate government, which means that all official Venezuelan financial assets in this country now belong to interim President Guaido. Maduro doesn't have control over it any longer. We're looking at the oil assets. That's the single most important income stream to the government of Venezuela. We're looking at what to do to that. We want everybody to know we're looking at all this very seriously. We don't want any American businesses or investors caught by surprise. They can see what President Trump did yesterday. We're following through on it.
So if you think of a company like Citgo, which is owned by PDVSA, which is the state-run oil company there in Venezuela, we have a lot of those Citgo assets right here in the U.S. Is that something, for example, sir, that you're looking at?
Yeah, well, we're in conversation with major American companies now that are either in Venezuela or, in the case of Citgo, here in the United States. I think we're trying to get to the same end result here. Venezuela is one of the three countries I call the troika of tyranny. It'll make a big difference to the United States economically if we could have American oil companies really invest in and produce the oil capabilities in Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of the United States. We both have a lot at stake here, making this come out the right way.
Yeah, no, it's tragic to see such a resource-rich country, which once enjoyed such a high standard of living, for Latin America at least, now be in such a desperate state with 90% of the people now living in poverty. Let me ask you about the people we have on the
So again, it's just another example they're talking about on, again, a national, corporate media news network, just in broad daylight, discussing how, such a great opportunity it is if the government changes. And he even mentions about, we need to make sure we get this through. I mean, if you go to the other clip where he's like, we didn't have all that much to do with it, and then here's how we need to get this through. Like, if you're not involved in the attempt of overthrowing the government in this country, then how would you help get it through? Well, they're talking about basically just freezing. They told the Federal Reserve that I'm not sure if you're playing now, but maybe it's earlier, that they basically told the Federal Reserve that Juan Guaido is the real president and not Mojo. So then they could, just freeze all their assets. Basically, it belongs to him. Britain did a similar thing, freezing all the gold in the Bank of England from Venezuela, and it now belongs to Guaido, just because we have some law that, if we don't recognize that person as the president, then it basically carries through. And the bank just freezed 1.9 billion, 1.4 billion pounds in gold. But does he hate him because he's socialist? Maybe. Do they hate him just because they're not open to private business? I'm not sure. I feel that's a lot what coups were back in the day. It was just economic. I'm sure it's not too different now, but like just the arrogance of talking about completely different governments, nothing to do with the US. That it's going to be great for the economy, and we need to get these our oil companies into their investing, like privatizing the companies, investing and reaping the profits, rather than Venezuela getting for themselves. Again, I'm not an expert on, they said about how, it's the people are really poor under this government. Well, I'm sure it wouldn't be much better in other South American countries where it's not a socialist and it's on the right and everything's privatized. Not going to go into that, but it's just crazy, the arrogance. But that's just until we end it. John Bolton, he was a director of the Project for a New American Century, which were massively pushed for the Iraq War. They even send a letter to Bill Clinton in 1998, basically saying the sanctions they've had since 1991 to 1998 aren't enough, and there needs to be military action. And under the existing UN resolutions, they can take the necessary steps, including military steps, to basically talk about needing military force. So he's not averted to war and coups, which obviously he's so proud of to say in that video. I'm not an expert of other stuff, but I mean, here's another example. So you've got him talking about coups on CNN, him on Fox just kind of openly talking about, this new regime is going to be good for American corporate interest. And then you've got the New York Times, where he writes an op-ed. They don't have to take this opinion. To stop Iran's bomb Irans are just openly calling to bomb Iran in 2015 in the New York Times. So you got three different, none of them state-owned, and just openly calling for this stuff. It's just pretty nuts. And you can find so many articles like this. People from the Project for New American Century, a couple of them write an article for the New York Times, the Washington Post, calling for the invasion of Iraq. I'm sure there was loads back then. I'm sure there probably wasn't even in Britain, but like just the arrogance to do that. And especially, it's just, I touched on earlier, the nonsense of in the West, we believe obviously in democracy and, democratic leaders who are elected by their own people, freedom of speech. And then they're like, well, we don't like their government, we're doing everything we can on our end to make sure this one gets in. And they say it's for the people. Obviously, it's not. A coup is completely like covert and there's nothing democratic about it. But I'd like to know if he went into more detail. I'm sure it's probably to do with Venezuela, but he's been around a long time. So who knows? But yeah, that big smile on his face. But I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to go on too long. But yeah, that clip is just everywhere. It's everywhere on social media. I'm sure it will get forgotten in a certain amount of time in the public memory, at least. But yeah, just it's crazy. But I'm not going to go round it in circles. So thanks for tuning in to the Truth Over Comfort show again. And I'll be doing a few more smaller videos that, more bite-sized for people who don't want a longer video, because it's nice, especially this video is just short and snappy because it's just a clip. You could even just watch the clip without it online anywhere. It's nice to have like a bit more context and a bit around it. But John Bolton, not a great guy. I'm not an expert, but if you're writing articles and going on multiple TV shows, network news, bragging about coups or supporting this regime or whatever, it's not the best. But yeah, we'll have a few more videos on Afghanistan coming up, and I hope to do some interviews soon. But I'll see you on the other side.